don't plan to say a whole lot. However, I did write it down
Sure.
on many sheets of paper, which is an indication, in the old days, at the 80th birthday, gave a long talk and no notes or nothing. But when you get to be 90, the memory is. So, a few little comments. Get comfortable. I'm only going to say thanks, but it's going to go on forever. And I've got lots to say thanks about. I really have a wonderful, wonderful family and some great friends. And I am really appreciative of you all coming. First things, I think I ought to introduce my friend Bergen since he's my advisor sitting here. He and I went to University of Wisconsin together, East High School together, the U.S. Air Force together, and we drove out here. We graduated from college. On Friday and Saturday we got in the car and we came to California and never moved back. That's interesting because one of my really serious points in my life came from my father. My father was not a philosopher. He was a guy whose parents, dad died when he was 14. He had 6 sisters and 3 brothers, and he personally, starting out from 14, raised the family. There was an older brother, but he wasn't too inclined to accept responsibility. But he did, and he worked like a dog, and he raised all those people. And he gave me the 4 rules by which to live. And you probably think I'm going to give you the 4 rules. I'm not. Because some of them were kind of intimate. But he did give me the 4 rules, but one thing he did tell me, which I remember and which is true, he said, don't chase the money. He said, chase the family. And he said, your reward will be the grandchildren. Take it from me, I know. And I thought that in history, I look back and he was right. He was really right. And what did I do? The day after I graduated, I came to California. He never saw hardly any of my grands. And in fact, the poor guy died and didn't see a lot of them. My mother came out periodically and watched and all that kind of stuff. But my family treated me much better. Everybody stuck around, raised their children in front of us. Nobody talked about going anyplace or leaving anywhere. And we had all the kids and we watched all of that. And later on, as the family started to break up, as they got older, they left. But that's forgivable. Everybody's got to live their own life. But he was right. And the big reward that I got, and I believe that Lulu got, was watching our grandchildren grow up. It was so nice. It's a wonderful thing that happened. And my children, and I thank my children for that. None of them, except my daughter, moved a little prematurely. But by that time, we had seen most of the growth of Cameron, which was the first grandchild. And so our life with our children has proved, I think, my father's position, that your reward really is your family, and it really is the grandchildren. Everything else goes up and down,
We love you all.
Yes, it's the truth. Anyway, I think probably I should say a quick thanks to my mother and father. Had a strange combination there. My mother came from a modestly wealthy family. My father, as I say, was head of a family at the age of 14. But he was a big, strong Irish guy who occasionally liked to get into a barroom brawl, which some members of our family has followed him, one in particular. But nonetheless, he somehow or other, they had a wonderful marriage and a lot of affection, and they embedded in us the idea that happy family, that's the key to your success. What do we do? Forget the money. Well, that was easy. I had a facility for getting money, it was terrible. And Lulu was not much better. You kind of forgot the money too. It wasn't too important to her, which is a good way to miss meals if you overdo it. Anyway, that was my father and mother, and I thank them. And of course, I want to thank my sons for throwing this party. It was very, very thoughtful. It's really nice having a few of my friends around. You know, it's a great way to be 90. Major thanks goes to my sweet wife. When we were going together, she was almost engaged to a doctor. And unfortunately, he didn't understand the word competition very clearly. Because at that time, I really competed like crazy. And I was in there hanging in for grim death. And all of a sudden, Lulu went to the drugstore and bought the ring.
No.
Then I began wondering who's chasing who here, for sure. But she went by, and then when things dragged on a little bit, she bought it and physically got her hands on it and said, "This is it," you know. And she said, "By the way, if it isn't, I'm going to marry the doctor." I said, "Well, you put it simple and clear like that. I'll figure that out. Give me the ring." So we were married, and we had a long talk. And she said, "Tell me about how it's going to be." That was a phrase that she used throughout our life. How's it going to be? How's it going to be? Well, I said, I'm going to become an international lawyer. I've always wanted to do that. I studied hard in high school. I went. Bergen studied hard. He was on the honor society there for 4 years. We had one common interest. We were both Latin students. And I was a Latin student because I was going to law school and I didn't want to take Latin in high school, in college. And you have to in order to get a law degree in Wisconsin at that time. By the time I got to become the law student, it wasn't true anymore. But we had the most gorgeous Latin teacher you ever met. I never forgot her, Mrs. Margettis. And Bergen said, "You got to sign up for law school here, class of prereqs, you know, you got to learn Latin." I said, "Do you really think so?" I said, "Oh yeah, you got to do it." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because we got a gorgeous Italian lady who's teaching it." I said, "Okay," we did, and she was. She was a very classy, nice lady, and she was an excellent teacher. And we did learn Latin, and it did help. In fact, it helped throughout the years. It helps in the writing of briefs to this day. So actually, we had a good time being students at Madison East High School, and I told Lulabelle that I was ready, and I knew what I was doing and where I'm going. I'm going to become an international lawyer. And I said, that means that I'm going to be gone for big lengths of time. She said, "Okay, I'll make you a deal. Got to have a house, got to have 4 to 6 children, and a big station wagon, and a little money in the bank." I said, "The little money in the bank part I can handle easy, you know." But I said, "Okay," and we literally shook hands. That was a bargain we made. And
Is that true, Grant?
I came out here.
She's shaking her head.
And I went to work for Carnation Milk Company. And I met some great guys, one of whom was my friend, Mr. Doyle. And of the 8 candidates we had, the Carnation Milk Company hired 8 guys to become supposedly future members of the board. I don't think any of them ever became future members of the board. In fact, Nestle's took over the company and probably hired a bunch of Swiss guys. But in any event, we spent a really happy year together. We had a long training program for a solid year, and we moved it up and laughed. And the 3 of us, me, my wife, and good old Bob Doyle, were buddies, and we hung out together. And it's really great. We haven't seen him in 30 years, and it was very nice that he would come to my wedding. I mean, come to my 90th. So, anyway, we started out, and I came out here and I enrolled at USC's grad school, and I struggled through the graduate school and did modestly well, everything considered. Made friends with the dean, made friends with the instructors, and when I got ready to go to law school, they all wrote letters of commendation and all that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed college. It was a lot of fun. And I was making a little money in those days, and I thought it would be nice to get a doctorate from a good school. So I looked them all over, and I thought, University of Zurich would be great. And so we gathered up all the children that we had at the time, and we went to Zurich, and we went skiing there. And I interviewed with the University of Zurich School of Business, Finance. And they gave me this big pep talk, and they said, oh, you're a graduate from USC, we'd love to have you, and all that kind of stuff, and we can admit you. And even though you had kind of a shoddy record in your undergraduate of Wisconsin, but I did well in the graduate school there. So I came home in Zurich, and I said to Lulu, you know, they're going to accept me. And she said, stop. I said, what? She said, we got 2 kids now. What do you think about getting a job? I said, well, you know. And she said, I've had enough of this. I know I signed the contract, but this is getting ridiculous. So I said, okay, I see what you're saying. So I went back into Zurich, and I thought, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put this off a few years, like forever. And that was the end of that. So I did eventually go to law school. I went to USC for a year, and then I was going to USC. I hadn't graduated actually from graduate school yet, so I was going to graduate school and the University of California's law school, and the tuition was very expensive, and the competition, it was a little tough. It really wasn't all that tough. But we had some problems and troubles financially because there were no student loans and things like that in those days. So I went and talked to the dean, and I said, you know, financially, I just can't make this. And Uncle Bergen was good. He was running a profitable, good company, and he hired me as a construction guy, and I worked for him off and on while I was going to 2 different schools, the law school, plus I held down a full-time job. And the whole thing, I didn't notice that it was kind of a tough deal, but I was cruising along, and we had a good family, we were all laughing. And her uncle was a banker, and the banker said to me, why don't you buy a house? And I said, I'm having a tough time buying groceries. What are you talking about? He said, no. He said, I'm the president of the bank. I'll loan you some money. You can buy a house. We'll work out something. I said, good deal. So we did. We bought a house, and I switched over to Southwestern, where the tuition was lower, and it was only 3 times a week. It wasn't 5. And I cruised along there. I had a good record there, and it was a good experience, and I thank good old Southwestern. They did a good job. Children. I thank the wife because I came home from all these schools and all that kind of stuff. She never bitched or moaned about it. Until we got to Zurich, she never said a negative word. And when I got home, sometimes at 10 o'clock at night, there was always a good hot meal. She was a wonderful cook. And she was a wonderful mother, professional mother, studied home economics at the University of Wisconsin and learned all about it. I've now passed through page 1, so I guess maybe I'm half done. I could talk for hours about Lulu Bell. There is no way I could have gotten through school or could have done what I did, whatever it was, without her support. She's like a rock, and she did things right. And she was loving and a really good mother. And since my father had told me the family is everything, she made sure that the family was strong and healthy, and we never had any problems. So, next thing, I want to thank the children. Lisa was our oldest child. We adopted her. She was a sweetheart, and we were really super thrilled to get her. Happiest day when we went down and got her. And she was so smart. She was smarter than anybody else in the family. And but before she became nastily smart, she was very sweet. And she had a great billy goat laugh, and she was very affectionate. And she was a wonderful little girl. And we liked her. Then we got Timothy. Lisi adopted him. She just fell in love with him. When we said we're going to go get Timothy, she was probably the most excited person in the place. She was really excited to go get her brother. Really wonderful. And when we got him, she said, oh, he's so cute, he's so pretty, like that. And she just dove in there. We had the fight to get to Timothy, you know. because she loved him, and she felt very protective, which was proven once. I was roaring down the freeway in my Lincoln, which I could afford because I was making a little money here and there. I got appointed to some government posts and this and that. And I bought one of the last Lincolns they ever built where the doors open into the wind. So we had Timothy in the back seat and Lisa in the back seat. I'm roaring down the freeway headed for someplace in the mountains. And I always told Timmy to stay away from the door there because the door was open. So
That was before seatbelts.
they didn't have seatbelts in those days. And he starts playing around with the door handle. And Lisa grabs him like that, and then the door pops open. Almost ripped the door off the side of the car. I had to take the car to the garage and have it all fixed. But she had I looked back, I thought, oh my God, Timothy just went out the back door. Nope, let me hit. Right hold him, and she's choking him to death almost. And I pulled a little bit curb quick, let him up. She's looking at him to see if there's anything okay. No sweat. So, in a way, she probably saved him from some pretty bad freeway bruises when he fell out on the 4-lane freeway there. So, that was Lisa. Timothy was a guy who had a very calm personality. He was very sweet. Aside from being adored by Lisa, we all were so excited the first boy when he arrived. And that was a happy, happy day in our family. And I began to think, my father knew what he was talking about. We were starting to have a real happy family, and it was very, very nice. He had a tendency to have to learn things the hard way, but he did learn. And he was a good student and all that. He never embarrassed us. He always brought pride to our family, and it was very, very nice. And on top of that, he did not take his children and move like I did. He left them here, and we got a chance to watch our grandchildren grow up. And he waited until the children were leaving before he let them go. So, can't really ask for much more than that on the first son. So then we got our friend, our lovely second boy, Terrence. Terrence was kind of an intellectual guy, kind of buried himself in things. He went to law school. He did very well in law school. He went to work for a huge law firm using some of the things that he learned in my law school. We were one of the first companies that gave the computers to the lawyers, one of the first companies that did the research the way we did it intellectually on the internet. And he took some courses to learn how to do some of those things. And when he looking for a job, I told him, I'm not building this law firm for anybody. You do what you want to do. I'm not going to be a father who forces his kids to go to law school, because I met a lot of those guys, and that's not a pleasant situation. So I said, do what you want to do, and we'll support you as best we can. And he did very well. And he went to work for a huge law firm, became a specialist, and really a good lawyer. A little reserved, but a nice guy. Then we got Patrick. Patrick became a priest. He marries people and does all those things, but raises beautiful grandchildren too. And we had a really lovely experience added to what Timothy did with the grandchildren, and it was quite an experience. We had one or two little problems. He unfortunately slugged the high school gym teacher and knocked him kind of senseless. And the student principal called me out of a meeting with 4 Japanese guys and said, come quick or we're going to throw your kid out of school. And so I went there, and lo and behold, he nailed this guy and put him away. And so I was in a position where I had to apologize. I wrote letters of apologies. Later, we invited the principal to his graduation, and we all toasted him and Patrick. And Patrick did his job by my father's standards. He raised great-grandchildren with the help of his sweet wife. So that turned out very good too, and we were pleased with that. So that's thanking the children. let's see, what else do I think? The grandchildren. The grandchildren. We had altogether 9, 6 ladies and 3 boys, and they're all great kids. None of them got arrested. None of them were boo-boos. And they're all loving. And if they weren't loving, they pretended they were. And so we were very, very happy about that. And again, as I say, I didn't tell you about the 4 things that my father said. These are, follow these rules. These are the rules, and don't deviate. And I never have. But it was tied in a little bit to the grandchildren thing. And I thought to myself, you know, I always showed respect to my father because he had a terrible burden and he made it. And he married a rich girl who became broke almost on the day of their marriage. And she wound up, instead of having a rather plush life, married to an Irish farm boy. So, everything considered, I honored my father. I did what he told me to do, and we lived through that nicely. And then the grandchildren came. They proved to be wonderful grandchildren, and that was a very, very good life that fit into what I thought people wanted from Lulu and from me. So now I have a few friends which I'll introduce quickly. Uncle Bergen here, his real name is Berger, but the children when they were young couldn't say Berger, they said Bergen. So I like that name, it had a nice sound to it. In Norway they have a city named after Jostein. And Uncle Bergen is kind of been my guidance. I didn't really pay any attention to the fact that he was overly scholastic. You know, he insisted upon being on the honor roll in high school and grad and all this. He couldn't stop, and it was somewhat embarrassing because we were buddies and we were all drinking beer together. He drank beer and did all that, and it affected my thinking a little bit, and I'm glad. It was really very nice. So Bergen then came out here and became very successful, made a lot of money, retired comfortably, and he was good enough to stay alive and be with me here during our trying times. So the last guy who just walked in is my friend Eddie Fujimori. Eddie Fujimori was managing the tour section of Japan Airlines, and he hired our law firm so we could write in there. We represented Japan Airlines. Very nice. And that was the days, no security checks, no nothing, and I was going to Japan every other month, and he would call me at about 50 minutes before the takeoff, and he would say, "Why am I reaching you?" I said, "Because you want to talk to me." "Oh, listen, the airplane is leaving in less than an hour. You gotta get down here. Come on, come on." Apparently he was had to see the first class passengers, and I was working for an insurance company and all that kind of, they were paying the bill. So I would run downstairs, jump in my car, drive like crazy, and get out there about 10 minutes before the airplane, run up to the thing, the door open, getting ready to slam it, and there would be Eddie gritting his teeth, bounce the board, and wham, the door would shut, and away we would go to Japan. He also gave us some other cases and stuff. Once we got the police department to come over and collect a huge check for him, and that was a lot of fun. We worked on that together. And that relationship has been going on. Plus, he was a very good skier. He used to come skiing with our family. And so we had him along with the children. Except he was a little reckless, but a lot of Japanese people are like that. Something to forgive. I'm pleased to say that Mariam is here with us today. She was with us for several years. I only had 2 ladies who were really dependable that worked for me. Although I had a lot of very nice ones who were competent, but none that were dedicated to the law firm. Mariam was dedicated to the law firm. And we tried a lot of cases. And she would sit with me at the table during the trial and remind me of things to do. One time we were out at the rural courthouse and we were grinding away, and we were representing this one lady. Her defense was that she had been raped 42 times. Well, Ellen, didn't have much of a sense of humor, but Miriam did. So Miriam kept going. And then at the end, she was a ladies' rights type person, and they didn't like the idea of anybody being raped. But 42 times that she didn't think that was really a red hot good defense. And so finally she just burst out laughing. And the judge leaped back. And she was, at that time, she was in law school. And I told her, I said, you almost got disbarred even before you got barred, So when the break, she ran up and said to you, I'm sorry. She just said, oh, it's okay, it's okay. But anyway, she was a great, great law clerk. She used to go with me. The court closed at 5 o'clock. At 20 minutes to 5, we would grab all the papers, staple them, jump in the car, and go down the freeway 90 miles an hour. And I would pull up to the courthouse. She would leap out of the car and run in and plunk the papers on the last 5 minutes. And sometimes the door was closed. She'd knock on the door. Most people, they would say, get lost. But she was very cute and nice. And so they would open the door and sneak it in. So she saved us many times from being in Malpracticeville. Oh, to my far right there is my fellow attorney, and he had a specialty. He gave wonderful depositions. People would say the damnedest things, against their case. And he would sweetly ask them all this stuff, and it'd go on the record. Later on, we'd cut their throat with it. And he just had that little knack. We represented one of the wealthiest widows in the state of California. And we sent him to Scotland, where he extracted some wonderful information. Amazing, really. And we had a very successful case. And then we were rescued by my nephew, Toddy. Toddy is a guy that we robbed from Yale University or Harvard or something. He should have been a teacher. He had good degrees from 4 of the most prestigious schools in the world. And he could have qualified and got a job at any university. And but he didn't like it. He didn't like that. He wanted to be a lawyer. So he became a lawyer. So we were confronted then with a bankruptcy in this case with the lady who helped me with the various and sundries. And he handled the bankruptcy of this super rich lady to cover the judgment. We had four counts. We won 3 of them, lost 1. The one we lost on, we lost money. But he got us paid in the bankruptcy. And you're talking a lot of money. Thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, which we needed desperately at that time. So Toddy is, of course, the son of my sister, and really probably the brightest lawyer I've ever met. The only problem is he has got great sympathy for both sides. If you represent the plaintiff, he sees the defendant's side. Or if you represent the defendant, he sees the plaintiff's side. I don't do that. I see one side, the guy we represent. The rest of them are wrong. He doesn't take that attitude. He takes the intellectual approach. It's just terrible. So, let's see. Who else do we have? Let's see. We have Mr. Doyle, I spoke with you, who was my fellow track man trying to get become the next member of the board of directors of Carnation Milk Company. And let's see, who did I forget? Everybody who raised grandchildren, I said nice things there. Said nice things about the grandchildren.
I think it's time for cake.
Is there anybody I forgot? What? I got you here as my advisor.
I'll advise you to quit.
My advisor, who's given me advice all my life, really, and I've listened to it sometimes. And it's time for the cake. My wife points out, so that's what it is.
I have a question.